quality and its impact on health in our curriculum from Montessori up to the metric level and O levels and A levels. So that's something which is going on. It's almost complete under the newly established curriculum authority by the Chief Minister. So that's something that is also new. Then plastic I've spoken about. So health-wise, in last 8 months, as I was saying, was more of mitigation plan. Punjab's first in Lahore division's first mitigation plan with targets, milestones, and monetary framework is already in place, in implementation. And fugitive dust, of course, was another area we visited. Beijing is a case study for the world also and for the region to follow. So we saw these sprinklers of recycled water where there were construction sites. So we came back and implemented it. It has already started. We have changed the law. Every construction site now has sprinklers to start with in Lahore. So that's one area that we are working on as fugitive dust, because we do have evidence and data in December and November where we had seen peaks for the first time. Of course, weather conditions did play a role. The regional also, they played, weather conditions also played a role in the peak, but our own activities, both in industrial and we've seen where there were construction sites, we saw AQI peaks in Lahore. So that was the initiative that is in place there. Then one thing which we did was that we've already written to our Foreign Office for regional diplomacy, climate diplomacy in terms of smog mitigation with India, and we're waiting for a reply from the Foreign Office to expedite also, and we're thinking of having, the Chief Minister has a vision of having and organizing a regional conference with India and with the region as well, because we think that, as we all know, that this has a transboundary, cross-border impact, regional impact also within Pakistan also. Karachi has seen peaks this time. Our mountain area, Abbottabad in KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, has seen peaks. South Punjab for the first time, Multan, Dera Ghazi Khan, bad air quality and has seen peaks. So it's no more a Lahore issue. Lahore gets, of course, attraction because of being province capital, but we have seen worse air quality days in other parts of the province and the country. And of course, India, Delhi, we've seen.
I think we've lost connection over there, but I think some of the points that she highlighted nicely flow into our discussion, especially on health and infrastructure and regional diplomacy. So I think we're going to go back to Ellen, and we're just about to start a discussion on the health impacts worldwide and in Pakistan altogether. So I think if the minister is still online, maybe we can still go to Ellen and continue discussion on health and come back to the minister later. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dawa, for allowing me.
Doctor, if I can finish, am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Sahaba, you're audible. We're just going to take some remarks on health from our WHO representative, and I'm going to come back to you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much, Dawa. First of all, let me thank Dawn Media for organizing this timely conference. And the question that has been posed to me this afternoon, and the one that I'm going to talk about, is the impact of air pollution to health, and that can also extend to the impact of climate change to health globally, as well as particularly in Pakistan. Air pollution has a serious impact on health, but it is in our hands to prevent and mitigate this impact. According to the recent Global Burden of Disease report, air pollution in Pakistan is responsible for approximately 128,000 premature deaths annually. If the first slide could be put up, and these deaths are preventable. And Pakistan, as a country, faces severe air pollution, particularly in urban areas, namely Lahore, Karachi, and as well as Islamabad, where smog levels frequently exceed self limits. In last November, the IQ Air rated the city of Lahore as the most polluted city in the world, with an air quality index AQI score of 1,165, and the Dawn newspaper reported this, a level that rose to an unprecedented score of about 1,900. The slides are not coming up, but they're just the pictures of what I'm talking about. Increased emissions from vehicles, industries, brick kilns, combined with the seasonal wildfires and crop burning, contribute to dangerous increases in the levels of fine particulate matter, and this exacerbates respiratory diseases such as asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, and lung infections, particularly among vulnerable populations, including children and the elderly. Children mostly because their immunity is not yet built strong, and also the elderly because their immunity is wearing out with age. This also has great impact when it comes to pregnancy outcomes and complications to pregnant women. A study by Pakistan Ministry of Climate Change also found that air pollution contributes to a significant rise in hospital admissions due to respiratory and cardiovascular illnesses. Air pollution should not be discussed in isolation of climate change, so I'll still bring in the issue of the health impact of climate change. For instance, climate change brought negative impacts through extreme weather events in various years in Pakistan, increased disease transmission, food and water insecurity, as well as displacement. WHO estimates that between 2030 and 2050, climate change will cause an additional 250,000 deaths per year worldwide due to malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress alone. The World Economic Forum report published in 2024 also warns that by 2050, climate change may cause an additional 14.5 million deaths and $12.5 trillion in economic losses worldwide. In countries like Pakistan, rising global temperatures also increases the risk of heat exhaustion, heat strokes, and cardiovascular diseases, particularly among vulnerable populations such as the children, the elderly, and outdoor workers. According to the World Risk Report 2024, Pakistan is among the top 10 most vulnerable countries to climate change and other overlapping crises, including extreme weather events, floods, droughts, and air pollution. In June 2015, a severe heat wave resulted in approximately 2,000 deaths, primarily in Karachi, and more recently, in June 2024, over 568 facilities reported in southern Pakistan, reported fatalities in southern Pakistan due to extreme weathers. Factors such as climate change, rapid urbanization, and deforestation contribute to the increasing frequency and severity of heat waves, leading to higher mortality and morbidity rates. In Pakistan, warmer temperatures as well as changing rainfall patterns expand the habitats of disease-carrying vectors, such as mosquitoes, increasing the prevalence of diseases like malaria and dengue. You would agree with me that during the mid-2022, after the flood happened in Sindh and Balochistan, there was a rapid increase in malaria cases, and between January and August 2022, over 3.4 million suspected malaria cases were reported in these provinces, and in the subsequent year, in 2023, over 2 million cases were reported for malaria, against an average of less than 500,000, which was the trend since 1973. Water sources also, because they are contaminated, lead to outbreaks of waterborne diseases. We saw a surge of cholera during the flood response. We have also seen a surge of dengue, even last year in 2024, especially in Punjab, including Rawalpindi, which is just next door to Islamabad. The impact of air pollution and climate change, as well as extreme weather conditions, is well documented, and the actions that can be taken have been discussed throughout the sessions from morning up to now, and they include reducing emissions, enhancing sanitation, promoting sustainable energy sources, forestation, designing infrastructure according to climate resilient, and also ensuring that we improve water sanitation, waste disposal systems for health facilities as well as industries. And also, let me underline the need for awareness, individual awareness and action for each one of us to protect their health, sometimes with simple measures such as being informed and following recommendations during heat waves about being well hydrated, as well as staying indoors when the air is polluted, things like those that each one of us can take part in looking after their own health. Let me finish by an example that WHO has done, a simple example of providing water filtration pumps that are run using the solar system in districts like Landikoto, Timagra, as well as other areas in Karachi, contributing to the reduction of emissions, but at the same time providing water, clean water source to patients in hospitals, benefiting over 2.9 million patients in 1 year. Let me stop here, but the journey ahead is long, but we have started with the steps that we are in. The clock is ticking, saving millions of lives is in our hands, and WHO stand side by side with Pakistan to face and overcome these challenges and deliver health for all, and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I think given the scale of the health impact of climate change and air pollution, it's obviously not something that a government alone can tackle. We obviously need advanced knowledge, which the WHO is providing. But the other subject that was touched upon by the senior minister as well is regional diplomacy. And I think I wanted to ask Indrika regarding this, that transboundary air pollution, we're seeing two types of it. We're seeing, of course, across the international borders. We're also seeing it among the countries which have different provinces. But particularly, while the provinces among them can coordinate, because we have, for example, in Pakistan, we have the Ministry for Interprovincial Coordination, which enables this dialogue. Right now, between India and Pakistan, or beyond the wider South Asia, if you consider the entire Indo-Gangetic Plain, which is essentially the air pollution, which has the crisis, what can be done at the transboundary level?
Thank you very much. I mean, as the Minister has alluded, South Asia has 9 of the world's 10 most, the cities which has the worst air pollution. So I think the data set is clear. And in addition, in the previous session, you heard speakers talking about the black carbon settling on the glaciers from air pollution that enhances glacial melt, has other impacts as well. So it clearly, as you said, is transboundary. And I think the airshed approach, where we look at the entire sub-region, recognizing the transboundary nature and the special interdependence of the whole air quality and that space is important. Concretely, maybe perhaps a few suggestions on how at a regional level we can improve the air management. I think one is to really establish a regional air quality framework that countries come together, look at this, given, as you rightly said, its transboundary nature, and the Indo-Gangetic Plain, for example, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and form a regional body dedicated to air quality, similar to what ASEAN has tried to do with its regional thing on transboundary haze management. A second recommendation could be to look at cross-border. If somebody could mute your microphone, please. We're getting some feedback. Cross-border monitoring and data sharing. And I think this is vital, given what you had said about the connectivity across the region. Activities that cause air pollution, from where it originates, how emissions travel. These data sets, I think, require cross-border monitoring and data sharing. As previous speakers have said, I think the need for some science-based and data analytics is really important in this exercise, and also trying to perhaps harmonize air quality standards and pollutant measurements, because that also is not really, at least at a regional level, perhaps that's a starting point for this. Sharing real-time satellite and ground-based monitoring systems and that data. And I think finally, not just at national, but at municipal and city levels, how can this data be brought together? And we heard from the minister some very good examples on how this is being done in the Punjab. Secondly, I think coordinating policy actions and emission control measures. Maybe we are shooting very high to and ambitious to look at legally binding commitments, but at least some commitments on emissions reduction, especially for the common causes, like was highlighted, like crop burning, coal-fired power plants, transport emissions, etc. What can we agree to as a common set of standards that could help us control emissions? And then at the same time, I think, simultaneously incentivizing alternatives. This is extremely important because one doesn't really work without the other. Looking at joint policy on crop burning and incentivizing alternatives like biofuel production, I think could be very helpful as well. And then, as the minister also talked about, these are very good examples of how do we phase out high emissions, whether it's in the transport sector or in industries, how that can be done, and really having some time-bound targets for perhaps even uniform emission standards for vehicles could be something we could look at. I think two more points here. One is the role of international institutions. I think the WHO, World Bank, UNEP, and others have a wealth of technical knowledge and upstream capacity support that could be provided, and financial and technical assistance as well, going hand in hand with multinational banks and IFIs. There's a good example from the EU where they successfully managed some cross-border air pollution policies through the Gothenburg Protocol. So maybe some of these examples also localizing it to our context. The Green Climate Fund and institutions like the ADB can also look at vertical and other finances that are renewable for renewables. Engineering, civil society, science, and academia, I think, plays an important role. And I think we have a wealth of expertise in the region, as we saw in the course of today. How can that be more joined up in our collective effort? And last but not least, as you were saying, the diplomatic and political commitment. I think this is quintessential for coming together, because no matter how we have local and regional expertise, platform standards, if that is not brought together with political commitment at a high level, perhaps using platforms like the SAC and bringing up this agenda, up the agenda of these meetings, and BIMSTEC and other platforms, I think also would be helpful.
I think the minister is also was speaking about this, and I think she's online right now as well. I just want to go back to that question that we were speaking about, how Pakistan, especially Punjab, has reached out to the Punjab government in India as well. So I think this is an interesting new dynamic that we hadn't tried before. And I would like the minister to tell us a little bit more about this and how we want to engage the broader South Asia region to really tackle on the air pollution crisis.
Thank you very much. Coming to your question, before I just want to, because some health-related indicators and data was being shared. when I spoke and after my
Gigi,
talk.
please go ahead. Yeah.
So one really has to look at the comparative data of the previous year also, that what Pakistan has seen in these last months and also the last year. So I can see the data that's now in front of us, because we are also making it very evidence-based and data-driven. So about 93,657 fewer patients during the smog seasons in hospital in last 4 months. So it's a substantial decrease, about 11% decrease in the patients if we compare it to the last year. And if we compare the AQI levels, so in 2023-4, the bad AQI days were 325, and this year, same season, we've seen a drop of from 325 to 278. So it's a drop of about 47 points. I think that again speaks volume of what happened, both in terms of environmental conditions, weather conditions, and also the policy interventions that we did in Punjab, specifically in Lahore division, and also other peak cities of Punjab. So we are at the moment under the EPA umbrella, where we've looked at lots of EPA upgradations. We're also looking, because before going and talking to India, I thought, and the Chief Minister thought, let's put our house in order first. Let's have a national, provincial resolve and interventions, looking at it from a sectoral lens, as I said, integrated, holistic, comprehensive, and then also in terms of our data, because we are also embarking upon establishing a climate observatory of Punjab, which of course will have data, as my previous speaker was saying, that, data, evidence-based, so that when we talk to other countries in the region, other provinces in the country, we need to have data. So we are at the moment compiling data of last 5 months comparing it to the last year smog season and bad days that we have plotted across the year. So that's what is happening. And then we thought that then we'll write to, of course, India and start dialogue with India. But we need to have these interventions in place in Punjab and in Pakistan before to have a more effective and efficient and a meaningful dialogue with other countries in the region. So that's how we're looking at it. Of course, international cooperation and funds. We do have Green Fund, Climate Fund, but this all, of course, depends on how we as a province and as a country take AQI and also climate resilience, adaptation, mitigation, and also the air quality as a national resolve. And at the moment, as I speak to you, there's a national campaign going on this climate resilience Punjab and clean air Punjab program. So that's what we are doing. We'll be happy to share all the data that we have to the audience, and also with the panelists, and of course the countries in the region that will come in a few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those comments. I think it's great to hear that there's a realization that we need to put our house in order, as the Senior Minister said. And I think that has been the theme of today's entire conference first day as well. Great to hear all the work being done in Punjab, and also how the inputs from international institutions about regional cooperation, science-based interventions, and really understanding the crux of the issues is being followed to resolve the health crisis that we have. I think with that, we will conclude the proceedings of this panel discussion, and we're going to shortly move to the next session. Thank you all for listening.
So we are immediately moving on to the next and last session, Beyond Fossil Fuels, which is closely linked to the issue of air pollution.
Thank you.
Oh, there is actually, we have Sunita Narayan, who is not able to attend, and so I believe we have her online. Tape is going to be playing. It's a clip, yes. So thanks to the panelists, and let's listen to Sunita and then move on to our, yeah, please be seated, and move to the next session, please.
Thank you for inviting me to the meeting to discuss the critical and urgent issue of climate change and the need for resilience in our region. I'm really sorry I'm not with you in person, as I know this workshop will make a huge difference in the change we so desperately need in our world. We are in this session discussing the terrible public health emergency of toxic air pollution and the actions we must take. Let me share with you my experience from Delhi, where we have learned the need to take leapfrog actions. In the late 1990s, when Delhi had deadly black smog, which was really affecting our lungs, and we realized the first time the impact of air pollution, the city moved all its public transport vehicles to compressed natural gas, CNG. This was done at huge cost. And it was done because CNG was much less polluting than the quality of fuel, the quality of petrol and diesel that we had at that stage in the mid-1990s and early 2000. So it was a transformational solution. Instead of taking incremental action, we decided to move all public transport vehicles, a total of 100,000 vehicles, within a year to a new fuel, which was much cleaner and so improved the quality of air. And in that period, we did see improvement. We saw improvement, and literally people in Delhi could see the stars and clear skies again. But then we also saw that the gains that we made were lost. And this was lost because of the explosion of personal vehicles that we saw on our roads, particularly diesel vehicles. And this then meant new action. We also learned that dirty fuel used in industries and power plants contributed to pollution. So as a result of it, a second generation action plan was worked upon. In the last 5 to 6 years, Delhi has shut its last coal-based power plant. It has banned the use of coal in industries. The government of India has acted at huge cost again to improve the quality of fuel. It has set new standards for vehicles so that these are much more cleaner. And now there is an investment in electric vehicles, particularly electric buses, so that we can improve mobility in our cities. Now, all this done, we still know that we have a long way to go. And this is particularly acutely felt in the months of winter when it is cold, and inversion means that pollution that actually exists through the year is much more visible. It chokes us, it does not allow us to breathe, and we and governments know that therefore action has to be much more transformational. But this is why every urban area of our countries, our entire region, needs to make a plan, a clean air action plan, which is based on the inventory of sources and then take action that is not incremental but transformational. This is important because all too often we tend to blame the other for our problems. For instance, in Delhi and in Lahore, I hear that farmers burning stubble cause air to turn toxic. This may be the case for a few days between mid-October to mid-November when there are farm fires and winds that carry these to either sides of the border. But this is episodal pollution. This is not the primary cause of pollution in our cities. The fact also is that farmers have no alternative to do this because they need to prepare their fields. And today the government of India is working to find ways to use stubble to make compressed biogas plant, and this I hope will make sure that the problem goes away. But the air pollution problem in our cities will grow until we find local solutions to traffic, to congestion, to the use of coal burning in factories, to garbage that is burnt because we are not segregating the wet from the dry. So please, let's recognize this is our challenge and also our opportunity to do things differently, to build an urban future that is resilient, and it is resilient because the solutions we have chosen are affordable and inclusive, and because of that, they are sustainable. Thank you again for inviting me to share these words, and I wish you and the conference great success. Thank you.
Even though Sunita is not live with us, I thank her on behalf of this gathering. And let me just say in conclusion of the second panel that between Minister Mariam Aurangzeb and Sunita Narayan in Delhi, we heard a telescoped version of dangers recognized as well as efforts taken by government and non-government entities on both sides of the border. And if there is an epicenter for toxic air, it is in this radius with Lahore and Delhi at the center. And this is a global epicenter, not just for South Asia. So very good to hear such important and very contextualized presentations by both Minister Aurangzeb as well as Sunita Narayan. And I also thank our facilitator Dawar Bhatt and Ellen Tom from WHO, as well as Indrika, who comes again for the next channel. So thank you all. Bye. May I now ask, now that we're going into beyond fossil fuels, balancing development and decarbonization, last session of this incredibly long day, but I'm sure the organizers at Dawn Media planned this day as such because the topic is very important, topics are very important, and there's no way to bring them within one agenda or one theme or one session, which is why we have a separate session now, beyond fossil fuels. May I ask the panelists to come up? Abid Koyun Sillery, Executive Director, SDPI.
May we request this panelists for the next session to come onto stage?
And Raksha Thapa from UNICEF's regional office based in Kathmandu. Senator Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Federal Minister for Energy.
Thank you so much.
Kanak Sahab, while we wait for our other two panelists who will be joining us shortly, please feel free to commence the session.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for Suleri Saab, who's the
Ji and Harjeet Saab,
facilitator, who's out there. Well, to keep you in focus, let me just say one point. The issue of electrifying public transport was raised both from Delhi and Lahore. Let us keep in mind that those electric buses will actually be running on coal because the electricity is generated through coal plants. And so I think we need to move quickly towards alternative generation of energy as well. That's just as a filler while I waited for Suleri Saab to come in. Do we have any word on the minister? Any word on the minister?
I think he's
okay.
Still busy in this cabinet meeting.
Okay, so we'll move on, and if he joins us, we'll have him on certainly. Let me now pass the mic to Suleri Saab, Executive Director of SDPI, one of the premier development policy institutes of, not of Pakistan, but of South Asia, with a long history of solid and rigorous work. including under his leadership. So you may take the panel ahead, and let me introduce Harjit Singh, who's just joined us, comes across the border from the east, and he is the Global Engagement Director of an effort that is completely relevant for this session, Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative. So welcome to you all, and Sulari Saab.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Kanakji. It's always a pleasure to reconnect with you. So this important session is about this economic development and decarbonization. Use of fossil fuel, whether it hinders the economic development, whether it promotes economic development, can both be taken together, that is decarbonization of economies and economic development. And what does it mean in the new era of drill, baby, drill, where one can see that many of the developed nations, including United States, they are shying away from decarbonization. Now, another aspect that I want to put before I go to the panelists is some of the new tariffs. And these tariffs are not the American tariffs. CBAM, the European Union's mechanism of carbon border adjustment mechanism, whereby from 2026, most of the imports in EU, they will be subject to additional carbon taxes if the supply chain and the manufacturing processes, they are not green enough, which means that many of the developing countries, they would erode their competitiveness, and they would erode the markets. Now, within this context, we have three eminent panelists. We are sorry that Minister couldn't join us, but we have, as Kanakji told us, Harjit Singh from Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. We also have with us the representation of South Asian regional directors. So Mr. Indreke Ratwata, who is here with us since morning, thank you, is not only representing Afghanistan, he is representing on behalf of all the regional directors of UN coordinators in South Asia. And then we have with us Dr. Thapa, who is representing UNICEF. I'll come to the colleagues from UN later, but Harjit, taking the benefit of your presence here, I was a bit curious. We used to think, and part of the reason that many of the academic writers, they said that MDGs could not be achieved because MDG 1, Millennium Development Goal 1, that is economic prosperity, and 7, that was environmental conservation, they contradicted each other. So many governments, while they tried to pursue both policies, both MDGs in silos, they contradicted each other's effort. Now, when we are talking of green development, what are the unique challenges and needs for South Asia to take these two things simultaneously, to grow and to grow green? And what makes us think that while many of the major producers and emitters, if they can drill, baby drill, why organizations like yours, they tell us to go green?
First of all, thank you very much for having me, and a lot of appreciation for Dawn Media and all the associated partners for this wonderful initiative, much needed conversation, not only in Pakistan, but for the entire region. So thank you very much for this, and thank you for having me. So first of all, Abid Bhai, as you very rightly said, our thinking over the last few years has evolved. And it's not environment versus development anymore. At least at the conceptual level, we have resolved that. On ground, yes, there are still many challenges, and that's where we need to be really moving forward from that narrative to implementation. And that's why we moved also from MDGs to SDGs, where focus is on sustainability. No development can be sustainable if it is done at the cost of environment and degradation of nature. I think that's where we need to make sure, and good that we are talking about fossil fuels and decarbonization. Let's recognize that South Asia hosts 1/5 of the world's population. We are hugely dependent on fossil fuels for energy, close to 50%, almost on an average from the region. We are extracting coal, oil, and gas. At the same time, we have seen huge progress in renewables, including in Pakistan, and I've been hearing a lot of data, and also a lot of potential that we have. And there's also a recognition that if we continue to go with the fossil fuel extraction, it not only causes local level destruction of natural resources, we also look at the issues related to displacement, but also when you burn it, look at the issue of air pollution. So there is that recognition that fossil fuel-based development, which has caused the climate crisis in the first place, is not the way to go. At the same time, we also realize that this region is also facing the challenge of poverty and also energy poverty at the same time. So we cannot say that we are going to shut all the fossil fuel projects immediately. What we need is a just transition away from fossil fuels so that we are able to also provide energy to people if we have to really lift them out of poverty. So what is that formula going to be? And that's something which we have to resolve at the local level, at the national level. But the important thing here is the role of international community. And that's where when you say drill, baby, drill, we need to talk about how this issue is about inequality and injustice. The fact is that a bunch of countries and corporations are responsible for the climate crisis that we are facing. We've been hearing about Pakistan, and that's true for the entire region, that we are not the ones who created this crisis. So who are the ones who did it? United States, 1/4 of cumulative greenhouse gas emissions came from the US. Another quarter came from European Union. And we have seen how Australia, Canada, Japan, Norway, they continue with their extraction even now. US is right now the top fossil fuel producer already in the Biden era, and now Trump says, drill, baby, drill, which means it's going to cause more problem, not only to the US, of course, we have seen Los Angeles fire, but it's going to wreck the entire world. And countries in South Asia, countries like Pakistan, are going to suffer disproportionately. And for us, it's a matter of justice. For us, it's a matter of equity, and that's why we need to continue to hold rich countries to account. At the same time, I also want to acknowledge that we need to redefine development. The model that we are using right now is largely following the same extractive model. And that's what we heard during the day, that degradation that we are causing directly, biodiversity loss, which is happening because of that development model, or the excessive use of water and other natural resources, that's where we have to take really a step so that we are in sync with what you are saying with nature, and we cannot allow that development model to cause destruction. So in my view, I think we have a fair understanding, but what we are lacking is political will to some extent, but also financial resources. And I would like to put a spotlight on developed countries who have failed over the last 30 years in providing finance and technology to developing countries, including our region, to help us make that transition.
Thank you, Harjit, for setting the scene. And that brings me to Mr. Ratwata. So Harjit mentioned and highlighted the need for a sustainable energy solution in the region. Now, I would like to understand from UN point of view. Of course, it's one of the major SDGs, and many other SDGs, they are directly linked with this sustainable energy and transition to it. How, in your opinion, the region can incorporate sustainable energy solutions to ensure long-term adaptation to climate change? And if you can also, I was curious to know from UN colleagues, how does this reduction of funding from United States to WHO and many others in particular, but to UN system, and closure of US aid would have pressure on UN system to deliver on all the commitments that we have made.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abid. The last question is very challenging, but anyway. I think talking about how the region can incorporate sustainable energy solutions and long-term adaptation measures, a couple of points, I think, clearly, as Harjit also said, where the inequities and the justice issues are preeminently there when you look at the imbalance of the emitters and those who are impacted the most. I think that's clear. And that remains forefront as well. And as a region, I think we should frame that and keep that as one of our key advocacy points as well, impacting also the policy we do. Maybe 3 or 4 kind of rather telegraphic points here. First, given what we know of the data, given what we know of the research and the science behind it, I think one, really, how can we as a region come together to decarbonize the energy sector? I think this is key. We rely a lot still, given of the historical precedents of what is there in our energy consumption, heavy on coal and fossil fuels, which exacerbate, obviously, as we talked about, climate change at a multifaceted level. So at the same time, the region also has, we are at the forefront of exploiting renewables. So how can we, for example, shift towards the solar, wind, and hydropower in a more strategic manner, looking at it from a regional lens? And each country has its value add in this space. How can we move that forward? And there it goes to that in the second point I wanted to make on the regional cooperation. I mean, cross-border collaboration on energy grids, allowing clean energy trades between hydropower-rich countries and solar-rich countries. Can that be an approach that we can seek? Because this is also what we tap in our inherent territorial spaces. Thirdly, looking at climate-smart policies and financing with the mid to long-term objectives. Yes, there are immediate short-term measures we have to take, which have I think, tangible impacts, but the real shift comes with longer-term approaches here. And how can we meaningfully incentivize or give stronger incentives towards this transition to renewables? Can we phase out meaningfully fossil fuel subsidies, for example? How do we attract some international investments, again, at scale, as you were saying, Ajit, right? Not cosmetic, but at scale, in greenhouse infrastructure. What can we also mobilize through the private sector, not just in terms of corporate social responsibility, but meaningfully as an investment opportunity in public-private partnerships? I think the Sri Lanka's floating solar projects, and we've been quite innovative in the region as well. So can we tap into that? And finally, I think the resilience demands community-driven solutions. I think top-down doesn't work. We talked about it in the previous section as well, thinking globally but acting locally. How do we really support expanding access to clean cooking energy, promoting rooftop solar, enhancing battery lifetime? These technologies have a direct impact also on communities, and then it has a knock-on up as well, and not just top-down. Your last point, I think the US remains in the spectrum of humanitarian and development assistance, a very large donor, if not one of the largest. And that has an impact on all the programs it's done so far. And I think this current position of a review of assistance as a policy, nobody can argue with that. It's always good to look at efficiencies, the bang for the buck argument. But in the meantime, the impact of doing that with a freeze is that billions of dollars of resources that have gone, particularly also into some of the discussions we've had this morning, have been truncated or frozen. And we are losing Q1. And in the fiscal year, 90 days is April. That's already into Q2. And what stopped now has an impact in Q3, Q4. So basically, we are looking at a huge impact. Speaking for Afghanistan, for example, which is a special kind of situation compared to the other countries in the South Asia, 1/3 of the development and humanitarian assistance that comes is from the United States. So of 3 billion that came in and was raised and implemented in 2024, for example, $1 billion, grosso modo, was from the government of the United States. So the implications for the people of Afghanistan, which happens to be, like Pakistan, a country that has committed zero to emissions, but is one of the most climate vulnerable and impacted countries and least prepared. What does that mean? So, I mean, these are some of the challenges policymakers, I hope, reflect in Washington in their deliberations.
Thank you. And that brings me to Dr. Akshay Thapa. We heard two important points from Mr. Thapa. One is about role of climate finance, and second is about community-driven solutions. And from your perspective, I wanted to know your view on